chapter 5 and chapter 6. I'm going to tackle chapter 5 first. This is about the only way that we can do it. It's and we're doing this in 8 weeks, so we're going to have to double up this week, and then we'll double up the last week for chapter 9, and then I'll talk about pharmaceuticals. So today we're going to talk about, well, in this uh, video, my lecture will be about alcohol, and then next week we'll talk about, in the next lecture, I'll talk about all-arounders or, whatever. Those are hallucinogens, like LSD, marijuana's in there. So we'll talk about that next week, or not next week, but in the next video for this week. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 5, alcohol. Sorry, I should have done that before I started talking. The majority of people worldwide drink alcoholic beverages. The majority of people. This doesn't include Islamic countries where it is not allowed by Quranic law. China's alcohol consumption has doubled in recent years. India's alcohol consumption has increased by 50%. 23% of English boys and 27% of English girls 15 to 16 were drunk 3 times or more in the past month. Russian men consume the equivalent of 6 to 7 bottles of vodka per capita per year. 75,000 alcoholics are homeless in Japan out of a total of 100,000 homeless people. Most of the homeless people are obviously alcoholics. Around the world, more than 2 million people died due to alcohol last year. Approximately 10% of all diseases and injuries around the world were a direct result of alcohol abuse. Last month, at least 126 million Americans, 52% of all Americans 12 years and older, had at least one beer, one glass of wine, or one cocktail. 16 million of this group are considered heavy drinkers. More than 2/3 of the 11 million American college students at four-year colleges had one drink, and more than 2/3 of those drinkers had 5 or more drinks on at least one occasion in the past year. And if you're wondering what this is, it's called a beer bong. I think it is anyway. About 6.2% of 8th grade students, 18.5% of 10th grade students, and 30% of 12th grade students have been drunk in the United States. Now, 8th grade students, my grandson is a 13-year-old, and he is an 8th grader this year. Yesterday, about $250 million was spent at bars, restaurants, and liquor stores for alcoholic beverages in the United States. Yesterday, 7,500 brides and grooms were toasted with champagne in the United States. 25 to 30% of all hospital admissions in the United States were due to direct or indirect medical complications from alcohol. About half of the murder victims and half of the murderers in the United States were drinking alcohol at the time of the crime. More than half the rapes that occurred in the United States involved alcohol. About half of the American adults have a close family member who has or has had alcoholism. In the United States, 2,700,000 crime victims reported that the offender had been drinking alcohol prior to committing the crime. Every year, alcohol abuse and addiction cost businesses, the judicial system, medical facilities in the United States more than $184 billion, or more than $638 for every man, woman, and child. Alcohol may be as old as civilized man. Evidence of fermented beverages have been found in China that are at least 9,000 years old. A beer recipe was found in ancient Mesopotamia that dates back 7,400 years. Alcohol has been used as a reward for pyramid builders, as food for grain-enriched beer, cure-all, laudanum, alcohol mixed with opium, sacrament in both the Jewish and the Christian religions, water substitute with the contaminated water supply in Europe, social lubricant whenever and wherever used, tranquilizers for whoever uses it, and a source of taxes. It is especially heavily taxed in the United States and Europe. I'm just reading a book about 17th century Holland, and they're talking about the individuals can't drink the water. They're in the Netherlands. They can't drink the water, so everybody drinks beer. Even the children are drinking beer. Throughout history, alcohol has been banned for its negative effects on its users. 2,650 years ago, alcohol was banned in China. 2,500 years ago, alcohol was banned by select Buddhist sects. The ban continues to this day. The gin epidemic found 20 million gallons of gin being manufactured per year. The death toll was enormous. It was controlled by heavy taxing in 1751, which at that point reduced consumption. Prohibition in the United States with the 18th Amendment was ratified by 46 out of the 48 states by 1920. Iowa was the 29th state to ratify the amendment. Arizona was a state at that point. I'm not sure if Arizona and New Mexico did ratify it. It was repealed by the 21st Amendment in 1933. Alcohol prohibition or even control have often run into a stone wall. Attempts in sub-Saharan Africa to control beer consumption has been impossible because of the fairly nutritious home-brewed beer that provides a modicum of grain. The pilgrims loved their grog. This idea followed through to the revolution as alcohol sales and taxation provided needed revenue to finance the war. Temperance began in the United States in 1840, but wasn't successful until 80 years later with the 18th Amendment. Alcohol continues to provide revenue for governments in the United States. The federal government taxes alcohol manufacturers $13.50 on each 180 proof gallon. The states average a little less than half that much at $6.50, and that's one of the reasons why alcohol is so expensive. Beer and wine are taxed differently. About a nickel a drink goes to the federal government per beer. Wine is taxed by alcoholic content. 14% or less is taxed at 21 cents per fifth. 14 to 21% is taxed at 31 cents per fifth. 21 to 24% is taxed at 62 cents per fifth. Naturally sparkling wine is taxed at 67 cents per fifth. An artificial carbonated wine is taxed at 65 cents per fifth. Now you may wonder why are they call it a fifth? Why isn't it just a quart? And the answer is it's a fifth of a gallon. And that's why they call it a fifth. I have no idea why they decided to put spirits in instead of in quart bottles and putting them in fifth of a gallon bottles, but they did. Maybe it's just to reduce that select amount, I guess. I don't know. There are hundreds of different alcohols ranging from deadly poisonous to barely toxic. The alcohol that people drink is ethyl alcohol, grain alcohol, ethanol, or ETOH. This is what we used to call it in the laboratory. It was ETOH. If we were testing somebody for alcohol, we were testing their ETOH level, which is ethyl alcohol. The next most common alcohol is methyl alcohol, wood alcohol, or methanol. Isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol is a solvent used in medicine. And of course, we did use isopropyl alcohol constantly to clean and to, what else did we do with isopropyl alcohol? That's what if you have your blood drawn, that's what they're cleaning your arm off with. If they're doing anything cleaning you at all, they're cleaning you with isopropyl alcohol. Butyl alcohol or butanol is used in industrial processes. So we've got rubbing alcohol, we've got isopropanol, and we've got butanol, which is used in industry. And of course, we have ethyl alcohol. Any beverage with over 2% alcohol is called an alcoholic beverage. All alcoholic beverages contain ETOH, but may acquire the other alcohols in the production process. Additions due to production are called congeners, which add distinctive tastes, aromas, and colors to the beverages. If you've ever watched any of these things on television, maybe television shows, they're talking about wine that has a certain aroma or taste. Or there used to be a whiskey commercial where they talked about the oak. They cured it in oak kegs, and that oak flavor came out. Well, that's a congener, that flavor of oak. Congeners may be acids, aldehydes, esters, ketones, phenols, and tannins, or tannins. Some beverages add a number of congeners. Whiskey and brandy have the most, while beer and vodka have the least. The more congener in the beverage, the more severe the hangover. So there you go. Methyl alcohol is fairly toxic and has a curious affinity for the optic nerve. During Prohibition in the United States, some bootleg manufacturers mistakenly added ethanol to their beverages to increase the alcoholic content. The result was often blindness, or in extreme cases, the person died. Alcohol comes in three categories: beer, wine, and distilled spirits. Beer is produced when grain ferments, such as barley or wheat. Use barley or wheat to create your beer. Wine is produced when fruit ferments, grapes, plums, or peaches. And distilled spirits are made from fermented grains. Whiskey is 40 to 50% fermented grains. Tubers, that's potatoes mostly. Vodka is 75% tubers. Schnapps and Palinka is made from fruit, 40 to 50%. Vegetables or any other plant. Absinthe, tequila, mezcal, or rum. Rum is made from sugar. Mezcal is made from agave. And so is tequila, I think. These are two different types of agave, I believe. And absinthe is made from a wood fungus. It can be made from other fermented beverages. Wine is made from grapes, of course. Oh, I'm sorry. Other fermented beverages, they take the wine and then they distill it, and that's brandy, I think. Anyway, I don't drink, so I'm getting most of my knowledge from what I've read. Okay, so we have beer, we have wine, and we have distilled spirits. Um, 5 ounces of wine has the same alcohol content as 12 ounces of beer, or 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits. Same level of alcohol. So when we talk about a drink, we're talking about 5 ounces of wine, a 12-ounce can or bottle of beer, or we're talking about 1.5 ounces, which is a shot, I think. How much is a shot? I'm not sure. Let me check. How much is a shot? Oops, yeah. How much is a shot of whiskey? There we go. 1.5 ounces. Okay, so that's a shot. Yay! It was right. My son's a bartender, so I usually get all this information from him. He's not anymore. He's a cybersecurity specialist. Beer is the first indication that beer consumption comes from 10,000 years ago. Beer is made from grains, usually barley, but sometimes wheat, which have been allowed to sprout and then crushed and fermented with hops and yeast. Ale is 5 to 6% alcohol. Stout or Guinness is another type of beer. So you have ales, stouts, and porters. You have malt liquors, which are 6 to 9% alcohol. Examples of that would be Colt 45, Mickey's, or Old English 800. I don't know if these still exist. When I first put this together, they were fairly popular, and you would find malt liquor cans all over with Mickey's and Colt 45 and Old English 800. I don't know. I haven't been out on the streets looking at in the gutter lately, so I'm not exactly sure if they still make those. Lagers like Budweiser, Coors, and Miller, that's 3.2 to 5% alcohol. And then you have your Bock beers. These are mostly East Coast beers. Bock is real popular on the East Coast. Lagers are popular in the Midwest. Old Milwaukee, beers in Milwaukee and Chicago and most and Cincinnati are lager beers, and on the East Coast they make Bock beers. Hudepohl, Schangling, and Michelob Amber Bock are all Bock beers. Anyway, so if you go to drink someplace, you can either have an ale, a stout, a porter, a malt liquor, a lager, or a bock. And they're all different types of beer. And of course, they have different strengths. In Australia, I think most of their beer is malt liquor, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be Foster's, Australian for beer. That was an old commercial. Wine is a fermented beverage from a fruit or grain. Most people think of wine as coming from grapes, but it can also be processed from rice, peaches, or plums. Sake, for example, is rice wine. American wines tend to be stronger than European wines. American wines have between 12 to 14% of alcohol. European wines contain 8 to 12% alcohol. Fortified wines have alcohol added to them, and they are between 17 and 21% alcohol. Wine coolers contain juice and have around 6% alcohol, just like most beers, making wine coolers just as strong as beer. Now, you may ask yourself, why is American wine stronger than a European wine? And the answer is because in Europe, they weren't able to drink water. So in the wine producing areas, they made wine. In wine producing areas, they made wine. And because they were feeding it to their children, and sometimes they're mixing it with water, but usually they just gave it to them straight. It's almost like grape juice, but they didn't want their kids to get drunk, so they made it weaker. So European wines tend to be weaker than American wines. We don't feed we've got water here that is clean in the United States. So we weren't using wine to feed to our children. So our wine can be as strong as it needs to be. And that's why American wine has more alcohol than European wines. Distilled spirits are alcoholic beverages that go through a distillation process concentrating the substance into ethyl alcohol. These spirits are almost always stronger than beer or wine. When this process was developed in Europe, the number of alcoholics on the continent exploded. When the immigrants came to the United States, they found it cheaper to transport their sugar as rum and their corn as whiskey. Alcoholism has been very high in the United States since colonial days, and that's because people were growing corn and they wanted to make money, so the only way they could make money was to transport their corn. Well, they couldn't transport it as corn because that takes a semi truck, and they didn't have semis back then. So they would distill it and make it into corn whiskey, and then they could transport it a lot easier. It's the same way with sugar. When Europeans came to the The Caribbean, they decided that they were going to, it was perfect for raising sugar cane, and they would grow their sugar cane. If they crystallized it, they could transport it that way, but it was not that safe to transport that way. So it was a lot easier to make it into rum and transport it as a liquid rather than as a crystal. Europeans tend to drink much more alcohol than people in the United States. Americans drink 95 liters of beer per capita and 20 liters of wine per year. Germans drink 131 liters of beer per capita and 22 liters of wine. Brits drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 13 liters of wine. The French drink 40 liters of beer per capita and 60 liters of wine. And Italians drink 103 liters of beer per capita and 59 liters of wine per person. Alcohol is absorbed all along the gastrointestinal tract. It's absorbed in the stomach, the small intestine, and in the colon. In men, 10 to 20% of the alcohol is absorbed by the stomach, whereas women absorb no alcohol in their stomachs. Most of the men's alcohol and almost all of women's alcohol is absorbed through capillaries in the wall of the small intestines. Because of the different processing of alcohol for males and females, a woman who consumes the same amount of alcohol and weighs the same as a man will still maintain 30% more alcohol in her bloodstream because she's not absorbing any into the stomach. So it's not dissipating the amount of alcohol in her stomach, and since it's going into her, all of it's going into her small intestine, she's getting drunk a lot faster. Women have a greater problem than men because women have a lower percentage of body water to dilute the alcohol. Women have less alcohol dehydrogenase in their stomachs to break down alcohol. Women's hormonal fluctuations can make them more or less susceptible to alcohol's effects. Women absorb more alcohol during their premenstrual period than at any other time during their cycle. Alcohol does greater damage to women than to men. Female alcoholics have death rates 50 to 100% times percent higher than male alcoholics. The alcohol that is absorbed into the bloodstream is partially metabolized by the liver. The alcohol that is not metabolized by the liver moves easily through the capillary walls and can enter any organ or tissue because the molecules are small, it is water soluble, it is lipid soluble. Alcohol will readily cross the placental barrier and pass into the fetus's bloodstream. After imbibing, the individual will have the highest concentration of alcohol 60 to 90 minutes after the last drink. Now, this is something that you need to remember because people are taking their last drink and then waiting for about 20 or 30 minutes before they decide to take off in their cars. Now, the problem is, of course, the high point of their drunkenness isn't going to hit for an hour or maybe an hour and a half. So while they're driving down the road, they're getting drunker and drunker and drunker. Now remember, it takes about 20 minutes for fluid or food. It takes 2 hours for it to pass out of your stomach. So if you've been drinking for 2 or 3 hours and you're a woman, your food, well, some of the liquid's going to go into your small intestine fairly readily, but not food which is being digested out of your stomach. So within about 20 minutes, it's passed out of your stomach into your small intestine. Now it's working its way through your small intestine, and it's being absorbed by the intestinal wall. And it takes about 60 to 90 minutes for all that alcohol to get into your bloodstream. And now you're pretty drunk. And the reason is because you're digesting the alcohol that you consumed. Rate of absorption determines the degree of effects which can be influenced by weight, your body fat, your body chemistry, your emotional state, your health status, and your temperature, the temperature and barometric pressure. When it's hot, you sweat a lot of this stuff out, but when it's cold, it stays in your system. Absorption and drunkenness can be increased by increasing the volume or rate of drinking. Drinking on an empty stomach. You're better off if you've got food in your stomach because it stays in your stomach longer, and especially for males, uh, if it stays, the longer it stays in your stomach, the more that you're going to metabolize out of, or it's going to be absorbed by your stomach instead of your small intestine. Using high alcohol percentage drinks, um, of course, the more alcohol in the drinks, the faster it's going to get into your system. Drinking carbonated beverages such as champagne, tonic water, and pop, that'll accelerate it, uh, getting into your system. And warming the alcohol, the warmer the alcohol, that's like sake. Sake is served warm. It gets into your system faster. You can slow absorption or lessen the effects of alcohol by eating before or while drinking, especially fatty foods, meats, milk, cheese, anything that's fatty. Diluting the drink with water, ice, or juice, that works as well. 2 to 10% of alcohol will be excreted before metabolism occurs. The remaining 90 to 98% of the alcohol is metabolized through oxidation by the liver and excreted through the kidneys and the lungs. And this is one of the reasons, and I keep telling you this, but I was working in the emergency room, you could really smell the alcohol in people's breath. Why? Because they're excreting alcohol through in their breath. In order of oxidation, ETOH is broken down by alcohol dehydrogenase, which creates acetaldehyde, which is broken down by acetaldehyde dehydrogenase, which creates acetic acid, which is broken down by oxygen to make carbon dioxide and water. Acetaldehyde is a substance that resembles formaldehyde and is very toxic to the liver. So you are actually pickling your liver while you are drinking alcohol. It has been speculated that American Indians have a higher alcoholism rate and advanced cirrhosis because of disruptions of acetaldehyde dehydrogenase and alcohol dehydrogenase systems. This, along with the binge pattern of drinking, increases the likelihood of an unfortunate outcome for drinking with American Indians. Individuals may use home remedies to keep from getting drunk. Aspirin inhibits metabolism of alcohol, and when used as a prophylactic to lessen the possibility of a hangover, actually causes the individual to become drunk faster. I had a female friend when I was in the service. She was a nurse. She was a pretty heavy drinker, and she would always take aspirin before she went out to drink because she said it cured her hangover before it started. Well, in reality, she was just making herself drunker. And to tell you the truth, I never went out with her. I only saw her when she was not going out drinking. She used to take care of my kids sometimes. But I only saw her when she wasn't drinking. The reality is that blood is metabolized by the body at a fairly steady rate, about 1 ounce, about 1.5 drinks per hour for every 3 hours. 1 ounce. You can metabolize about 1 ounce every 3 hours. It takes about 20 minutes. That's one beer. That's 1.5. That's one glass of wine, one beer, or one shot of whatever it is that you're drinking. It takes about 20 minutes before the alcohol has passed into the intestines and has started to affect the brain. In most states, a blood alcohol level of 0.08 is considered legal intoxication. For truck drivers, it is half that level, and pilots is 1/4 that level. They shouldn't have any alcohol in their systems at all. England's legal limit is 0.04, but there's a lot of public transportation in England. You think of the English as big drinkers. They are. We just saw how much they actually drank. But most of these people aren't drivers. They don't have that many cars in England, not nearly as many as we have in the United States. Norway's legal limit is 0.10, which is higher than we have in the United States. But the reality is that in Norway, if you ever are charged with drunk driving, you will lose your license forever. So there you go. The rest of Europe is 0.025. Australia's legal limit is 0.05. And in most of these places, they expect you not to drink or not to drive if you're drinking. United States, yeah, well, we're a little bit different. Small amounts of ethyl alcohol or even infrequent bouts of intoxication have little, if any, negative effects. No level of alcohol use is safe for someone who is pregnant. Any mental or physical problems that an individual has can be aggravated by alcohol. Some are allergic to alcohol and its congeners. Some have a high genetic or environmental susceptibility to addiction. Some have a history of abuse and addiction. Alcohol increases the probability of breast cancer. Therapeutic uses of ethyl alcohol, it's used as a solvent in medications because it is fat and water soluble. It's a topical disinfectant, certainly works as a topical disinfectant. Body rub to reduce fever, usually that's methanol, not ethanol. Pain reliever for nerve-related pain. It can be used to halt premature labor in hospitals. You can give somebody a drink of alcohol and it will stop their labor. It can stop their labor, and sometimes it will just slow it down. In hospitals, we give them magnesium sulfate instead of alcohol, certainly. We don't get women who have started labor, we want to slow them down. We don't give them shots of whiskey. We give them magnesium sulfate. Vern Troyer became famous as Mike Myers' Mini-Me in Austin Powers movies. He drank himself to death. It was ruled as a suicide at age 49. Dolores O'Riordan was the voice of the Irish alternative band The Cranberries. She took a bath while heavily intoxicated and drowned at age 46. David Cassidy was a TV star on the hit show The Partridge Family and a teen icon who rode his fame into a successful singing career. He died at 67 of complications from a lifetime of heavy drinking. Amy Winehouse was an English singing sensation who battled drug addiction all her adult life. She died at 27 of acute alcohol poisoning after reducing her tolerance for alcohol by abstaining from drinking for a month before her death. Her blood alcohol test was 0.416. 0.08 is legally drunk in the United States. And you can multiply that out and find that she was 5 times drunk, or a little bit more than that. Healthy Mickey Mantle was potentially the greatest baseball player to ever play baseball. His career was diminished through injuries and alcohol-related self-sabotage. He died at age 63 of chronic liver problems after getting a liver transplant. Truman Capote was the author of such classics as In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's. After growing up as Harper Lee's neighbor in Mississippi, Harper Lee wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. Capote fulfilled the Southern drinking tradition by succumbing to alcohol-related health problems at age 59. And here he is dancing with Marilyn Monroe. Richard Burton was one of the most celebrated actors of the 50s and 60s. He famously married Elizabeth Taylor twice. He died at 58 of kidney failure and cirrhosis of the liver. And I just read a thing that said that he was drunk almost all the time. But Elizabeth Taylor was actually a better drinker than he was for some reason. I didn't quite gather. She could drink anybody under the table, is what it said. John Bonham was the drummer of the heavy metal band Led Zeppelin. Bonham died at 32 after consuming 1.4 liters. That's 1.85 fifths or 4 ounces of 4 12-ounce cans of vodka in 24 hours. That's a lot. Veronica Lake was the it girl of the early 1940s with her platinum blonde hair and a peekaboo hairstyle where she covered one eye. She died at age 50 of kidney failure and acute cirrhosis of the liver from a lifetime of drinking. Curly Howard was the butt of most of the Three Stooges pratfalls, and an introvert, Curly Howard was only able to perform when he was intoxicated. He died at age 48 of alcohol-related complications. Why people drink? Some people think it tastes good. Some people think it quenches their thirst, even though it's alcohol. And it should make you thirstier. It relaxes muscle tension to warm themselves up. It dilates blood vessels and increases blood flow to subcutaneous tissue. And that's one of the reasons why people that drink a lot of alcohol have red noses. Their blood vessels are dilating in their nose. Red wines are full of antioxidants and work as an anti-inflammatory on the circulatory system. So people drink red wine because of its antioxidant properties. 1 to 2 drinks per day reduces the incidence of heart disease and plaque buildup. It has an anti-inflammatory effect. It increases HDL, which is the good fat. It changes the interaction of the lipoproteins, HDL and LDL. LDL is the heavier one, and it's the bad one that causes plaque. It decreases tension. These effects are even true in the most serious alcoholics. These people die from enlarged hearts, cirrhotic livers, and damaged brains, but they don't die from other problems. Health benefits of alcohol in a viable women. Drinking increases the effects of estrogen on bone loss, giving them higher bone mass. 1 to 2 drinks per day lowers the risk of stroke. Heavy drinking actually increases the possibility of stroke. It can add to relaxation and decrease the time it takes to go to sleep. Alcohol reduces ARIA. The nurse I was telling you about, she used to drink a can of beer before she went to bed. And she said that's the only way that she could go to sleep. Alcohol reduces REM sleep and decreases dreaming, making the individual feel less rested the next day. Chronic drinking of alcohol increases the risk of sleep apnea. Not everybody has the same psychological effect with alcohol. It can depend on the environment used, the mood of the individual prior to drinking, the general psychological makeup of the user. That tends to lower inhibitions. It increases self-confidence. It promotes sociability. It calms. It relaxes. It sedates. It reduces tension. For someone lonely, depressed, angry, or suicidal, alcohol acts as a depressant. It deepens negative emotions with disinhibiting effects. Makes you verbally aggressive, physically aggressive, and sometimes violent. Even low to moderate doses can impair judgment when driving and result in vehicular crashes. It leads to high-risk sexual activity. Neurotransmitters affected by alcohol. Initially, it causes a release of serotonin, raising your mood. In excess, its use depletes serotonin, causing depression. Dopamine is released, giving a surge of pleasure. That's D1, D2, and D3 in the mesolimbic reward pathway. It causes the release of norepinephrine, resulting in positive mood and raised self-esteem. Metenkephalin is released, reducing pain. Glutamate release is pleasurable, reinforcing drinking. Endorphins and anandamides are released, reinforcing the drinking. NMDA receptors are inhibited, impairing memory. GABA is released, lowering inhibitions and slowing the brain. Low doses increases your desire in both males and females. We're talking about sex here. It can intensify orgasm in females. It decreases erectile function and delays ejaculation in males. Alcohol has long been mythologized as a sexual lubricant, though its effects should not always lead to this reality. Unfortunately, among adolescents, 39% of males and 18% of females believe that a drunk female is fair game to have sex forced on her. And this is something ugly that you need to realize, that there are people out there that are, if they are trying to get you drunk, it may be as an excuse to have sex with you. High blood alcohol levels can cause intoxication, but experienced drinkers can mask the effects of alcohol for a brief period. Binge drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks in one sitting for males and 4 or more drinks in one sitting for a female. 44% of college students admit to being binge drinkers. 21% of college students admit to binging frequently. Binge drinkers between 21 and 25 average 18 binges a year. That's 1.5 every month. Binge drinkers between 18 and 20 average 15 binges a year. For many people who drink frequently, 5 drinks will not get them drunk. Heavy drinking is consuming 5 or more drinks at a sitting at least 5 times a month. With heavy consumption, the drinker can no longer control their mood from the alcohol. The depressant effect takes over. Blood pressure is lowered. Motor reflexes slow. Digestion and nutrient absorption becomes inefficient. Body heat escapes rapidly because of chronically dilated blood vessels. Sexual performance becomes unlikely. Speech slurs, muscle coordination becomes questionable. Alertness decreases. High doses of alcohol, blood alcohol level of 0.12, remember 0.08 is drunk, may cause mental confusion, mood swings, loss of judgment, emotional turbulence, slurred speech, loss of emotional control, disturbed REM sleep and dreaming, fatigue during the day, insomnia at night, bedwetting, apnea in the form of snoring. Alcohol consumed at high doses rapidly can lead to alcohol poisoning at a blood alcohol test level of 0.40. That's 5 times normal. This is what killed Amy Winehouse. Probably if she had continued to drink at the level that she was and hadn't abstained for a month, then 0.4 level of alcohol in her blood wouldn't have killed her. But it's the fact that she abstained for a month and she built up it changed her tolerance. And because it changed her tolerance, then that much alcohol not only made her drunk, but it also killed her. This will cause a depression to the central nervous system, 0.40. They will become unconscious. They'll go into a coma. They will have respiratory arrest, cardiac failure, and death. I've been in on several of these where the individual died from alcohol poisoning. And one of the things, and there's nothing you can do, you can pump their stomach and get all the alcohol out of their stomach. But the alcohol that's killing them is the alcohol that's in their small intestine, and there's just no way to get that out. The longer they go, you can try to dilute it. You can put an IV in their arm and pump saline into their bodies, but there's just really nothing you can do. You just gotta watch them die. And usually these are teenagers. These are kids, and this may be the first time they've ever really had a lot of alcohol to drink. I mean, they don't have a tolerance level, and sometimes they die at some fairly low levels if you think about it. But there's nothing you can do. All you can do is watch them die. When other depressants are in the system, such as opiates or sedative hypnotics, metabolism is slowed and the possibility of death increases. You never know what else they've been doing. Usually, when somebody comes in, no matter how drunk they are, if you ask them how much alcohol they drank, they said they only had a couple beers, a couple, maybe a case. You just never know how people count. It's not funny because, you're the one that has to deal with it. As a medical person, I was one of the people that had to deal with it. My job was trying to figure out how much alcohol they had in their blood by drawing their blood and running the BAT, the blood alcohol test. And sometimes by the time you got the result, they were gone anyway. With novice drinkers with a low tolerance, the deadly effects of alcohol will begin at a lower blood alcohol test level around 0.20. Respiration severely slows. The abuser goes into semi-conscious state. Vomiting occurs, emptying their stomach. You know that you've already gotten everything out of their stomach. It's not going to do you any good to pump their stomach because everything's out of there anyway. All the alcohol is gone. Usually the first time they vomit whatever alcohol. The alcohol has become a toxin for them, and they're going to get all the alcohol out of their stomach that they possibly can. The abuser may aspirate vomitus, blocking the lungs or leading to introduction of acidic substance contaminating the lung tissue. The result may be pneumonia or death, and that's always a problem. That's a potential problem if they have been sucking that stuff back up into their lungs as they're vomiting. About 1/3 of all drinkers and 2/3 of all drunks experience blackout. During blackouts, a person seems to act normally and is awake, but afterward cannot recall anything that was said or done. Blackouts are caused by an electrochemical disruption in the brain. Even a small amount of alcohol might lead to a blackout. Blackouts are considered an early indication of alcoholism. A partial recall of events is known as a brownout. I had a student who was notorious for blacking out, and he had given up drinking, and well, anyway, it was really kind of interesting to talk to him about it because he thought everybody did it. I mean, he would start drinking and he had no clue what happened next. And maybe it's because he did some really strange things while he was blacked out, but he had no clue what was going on. Researchers have found several explanations for blackouts. The EEGs of individuals who black out show a dampening of the P3 and P300 brain waves. Women who had suffered a sexual trauma at an early age were more likely to drink and were more likely to black out when they did drink. Researchers have found that alcohol greatly disrupts the activity of the CA1 region of the hippocampus. The CA1 region of the hippocampus facilitates the formation of memory. Alcohol also disrupts the NMDA receptors in the hippocampus, and this receptor allows for long-term memory to be formed. No one is quite sure why hangovers occur. It has been speculated that the more congeners in the alcohol, the more likely the individual will suffer from a hangover, though even pure alcohol will leave someone with a hangover. And actually, we used to deal with pure alcohol. We had to get it from the pharmacy. We dealt with pure alcohol when we were mixing our reagents in the laboratory. And that stuff is really, Everclear. Everclear is almost pure alcohol. It's not quite, but we had pure ETOH. And if you tried to drink ETOH, I'll tell you, if you drink pure alcohol, it just burns the hell out of your tongue. Alcohol does irritate the stomach lining, and this might contribute to the intestinal symptoms. Other symptoms and results include, I haven't had a drink since 1976, so, that's been a long time. Never was much of a drinker, not very good at it. Never developed a taste for it. But while I was in the service, well, that's while I was in the service. I was in the service from 71 through 83, and I haven't had a drink since 1976. So I stopped drinking while I was in the service, mainly because I was a single parent. That's not real smart for a single parent to be a drinker. Other symptoms and results include low blood sugar, dehydration, tissue degradation, The bottom line, however, is that the more alcohol consumed, the more severe the hangover will be. Hangovers are the most severe many hours after the alcohol has been completely eliminated from the system. Nausea, vomiting, headache, thirst, dizziness, mood disturbances, abbreviated sleep, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, dry mouth, inability to concentrate, a general depressed feeling. Chronic high dose users are the most likely to suffer from a hangover. And you think, what in the world is this guy doing? He's putting his face in the cold water. He's got a hangover. The best way to control the side effects of alcohol is to control the amount of alcohol that you consume. The elimination of alcohol from the system is a constant 0.25 to 0.33 ounces of alcohol eliminated every hour. Hangovers are caused by an imbalance of your hormones, your enzymes, your body fluids, and your body systems. Until these come back into equilibrium, the symptoms will persist. The only thing that you can do is control your body fluids, because there's nothing you can do with your hormones, there's nothing you can do with your enzymes, and your body systems are malfunctioning, and the only thing you can do is drink something else. You can replace electrolytes. Gatorade is good. Gatorade works. Fruit juices work. Some people use pickle juice as a hangover remedy, but really the only way to do it is to ride it out. Body fluids and sugar levels can be replaced with fruit juices. Analgesics can reduce the headache pain. Nothing works on hormones. Nothing works on body systems. Nothing works on enzymes. Recovery can only come with time and rest. Tylenol should be avoided because it can do additional liver damage when alcohol is present in the system. So if you're drinking alcohol, which is already destroying your liver, Tylenol tends to do the same thing. So if you are smart, you will stay away from Tylenol and just use something else, aspirin or Aleve or ibuprofen. Chronic alcohol usage does more damage to the entire neurochemistry and cellular system of the body than any other psychoactive substance. So there you go. Alcohol especially affects the digestive system and liver because it is the organs of these systems that deal with the alcohol in its purest form. It is these systems that are tasked by the body to rid the entity of this toxin. 80% of the alcohol is metabolized by the liver. High doses and chronic usage damages the liver and compromises its function. You get fatty liver. You can open up your liver to hepatitis, and of course, when the liver tissue dies, then it's replaced with dead tissue, which is known as cirrhosis. Accumulation of fatty acids in the liver can occur after only a few days of heavy drinking. While abstinence will reduce the accumulated fat, constant abuse can lead to fatty livers. About 20% of alcoholics and heavy drinkers will develop fatty livers. Fatty liver is just one possible outcome. 10 to 35% of heavy drinkers develop alcoholic hepatitis. Hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver which can result in formation of scar tissue, fibrosis, cell death, necrosis, or damage to membranes. This condition is characterized by jaundice, which means that you turn yellow because your liver's not able to process the hemoglobin like it was before. Liver enlargement, tenderness, and pain. Abstinence is the only cure, but the liver damage is always permanent. If you do any damage to your liver, it's not going to recover. It just isn't going to recover. What you have there will stay healthy. What is still healthy will stay healthy, but the liver damage is permanent. Nothing you can do about it, except get a liver transplant like Mickey Mantle did. Mickey Mantle got a liver transplant and died 2 months later. He didn't die from the liver transplant. He died because he was an alcoholic. and it was a wasted liver to give him one, and it really upset a lot of people. Even though he was everybody's favorite baseball player, nobody really that wasn't really the issue. Was his ability to play baseball. The issue was that they wasted a liver on somebody that it wasn't going to help. When heavy drinking leads to excessive fibrosis and necrosis, the condition is referred to as cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is the leading cause of death among alcoholics. About 12,000 Americans die every year from cirrhosis of the liver. The cirrhosis is not only caused by the alcohol, but the metabolites of the alcohol that are actually more toxic than the alcohol. Free radicals and acetaldehyde. Remember the acetaldehyde that is like a formaldehyde? And I said you're pickling your liver. Well, it's the acetaldehyde that is actually destroying the liver. It usually takes 10 years steady drinking to achieve cirrhosis. 80% of all cirrhosis in the United States is caused by alcohol. 2.5 times more men die of cirrhosis than women. Hispanics seem to be the most sensitive to the cirrhotic effects of alcohol, followed by African Americans and then by whites. Now, you may wonder, what the hell's going on with white people? Why are they less susceptible to cirrhosis than other individuals? It's because Europeans have been drinking alcohol for an extended length of time, excessive amounts of alcohol, and they have become conditioned to it. So the people that were really sensitive to it died a long time ago. They died thousands of years ago, all the white people that were sensitive to it. And so the people that survived were the ones that could handle the alcohol. Now, what about Hispanics and African Americans? Well, Hispanics, a lot of Hispanics, the ones that are not in Europe, the ones that are in the Americas, are mixed with indigenous people, and that may be one of the reasons why they're so sensitive to it. African Americans, of course, were in Africa. They didn't have any alcohol to drink down there. So the people that have been around alcohol for the longest period of time are the ones that had the problem. I answered the phone. Hello? Hi. I know. Just I'm on the internet. What? Okay. All right. Bye. Rates of cirrhosis in the United States have waxed and waned along with popularity of alcohol in the culture. Before Prohibition, 17 out of every 100,000 people suffered from cirrhosis. In 1932, at the end of Prohibition, the level dropped by more than half to 8 per 100,000. By 1973, the disco era, the level had gone back up to 14.9. People were drinking a lot more alcohol. They're going to dance. When they went out to dance, they drank the disco era. They drank mixed drinks, fruity drinks with umbrellas in them, and the drinking went up. 2004, the level had dropped back down to 9 per 100,000. Not sure what it is today. Other countries, especially European countries, have rates of cirrhosis that eclipse that in the United States. Kazakhstan, 23.9 per 100,000. Germany, 15.4 per 100,000. Italy, 13.9 per 100,000. Spain, 12.2 per 100,000. France, 12.1 per 100,000. Japan, 7.2 per 100,000. The UK, 6.4 per 100,000. Australia, 4.6 per 100,000. Israel, 4.9 per 100,000. Greece, 3.4 per 100,000. You would think the UK would have a lot more people dying from cirrhosis. But the reality is, if you go to the pub in England, there's a lot of people drinking, but they'll nurse that drink all night long. And a lot of people are just there for the social aspect of it. Low doses of alcohol actually aid in digestion. Moderate to excessive doses induce overproduction of stomach acids, which causes the delay of the emptying of the stomach. Excessive use can cause gastritis, inflammation of the stomach, inflammation in the esophagus, inflammation of the small intestines, inflammation of the pancreas, known as pancreatitis. It's caused by blocked ducts or overproduction of digestive enzymes. I've seen somebody with pancreatitis. Don't mess with your pancreas. If you get pancreatic cancer, it's like 95% fatal. Well, it's not quite that high. It's like 75 to 95% fatal. Your pancreas is extremely important. You can't mess around with it. We had one guy when I was stationed in. There's a lot of alcoholics. There were a lot of alcoholics in the military when I first went in. This was during Vietnam. A lot of drinking, and that was what people were supposed to do. Everybody had to. If you were an NCO, you had to be a member of the NCO club. Officers had to be members of the officers club. A lot of drinking taking place. So we sent a lot of people down with, and some people are more sensitive to alcohol than others. If their pancreas got involved, we would send them down to a larger hospital, and they never came back. They just never came back. They died, and we never really found out what was going on with them. We'd just send them off to Wilford Hall in San Antonio, and we never see them again. But one guy came back, and wow, he was a mess. And the only reason that he survived, he was an alcoholic before he went. He was a really serious alcoholic. We had to deal with him over and over and over again because of all the drinking that he was doing. He got pancreatitis. We sent him down to Wilford Hall, and he had a total physical change. He decided that he was going to survive by doing physical things, and he became a weightlifter. He became a runner, long distance runner, and he actually came back, but he came back with a hole in his gut. It looked ugly. He couldn't take his shirt off because he had a divot in his side. And he didn't live all that long, but at least he lived longer than most of the people that went down who had pancreatitis. It's almost a death sentence. Anyway, ulcers, stomach hemorrhage, gastrointestinal bleeding, and cancer. We had another individual that was such a severe alcoholic that he had gastrointestinal bleeding. And one night, one night he started bleeding, and they were feeding him, they were pumping blood into him. And I was working in the blood bank, and I was cross-matching all of his blood. We cross-matched all the blood he was O positive, I think. And we gave him all the blood except the A and the B blood. We gave him all the O blood. We gave him O positive blood. We gave him O negative blood. We gave him all the blood in the blood bank. And we saved his life. They were feeding him ice chips to try to slow down the bleeding, and we were pumping all that blood into him, and it was just running right back out. But we saved his life. And it wouldn't have been so irritating, yay, we saved somebody's life. I had to work overtime because once you start a cross match, you can't stop until it's done. You can't give it to somebody else. It doesn't work that way, because if you make a mistake, they want to know who made the mistake. That's what the deal is. Anyway, so I worked until I was supposed to get off at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was working a night shift, and I didn't leave the hospital until about 1 o'clock. I was pretty tired. A month later, he came in. I checked him into the morgue. He'd gone back out. Well, as soon as they released him from the hospital, he went out and got drunk again, and his hemorrhage burst open. It was all over it. Anyway, irritating stuff. Strangely, you can live on alcohol as each drink carries about 150 calories. There is nutrition in there, but it tends to be poor nutritionally as there are few vitamins, minerals, or proteins. Heavy drinkers may receive half their calories, but little nutrition from their drinking. B1 deficiencies can lead to beriberi, heart disease, peripheral nerve degeneration, pellagra, scurvy, and anemia. And we see these all the time in people that are alcoholics. It's one of the reasons why you have to take a history on these individuals when they come in, because it may look like they have scurvy or anemia, and the reality is it's a B1 deficiency from their alcohol consumption. With heavy usage, intestinal complications may occur, which can result in secondary malnutrition, where nutrient absorption is impaired. Alcohol is so toxic that the liver must work overtime to rid the body of its effects. Unfortunately, the other important function of the liver is to store glucose or emergencies in the form of glycogen. With the stress of metabolizing alcohol, the liver is too busy to produce and store glycogen. Because of this, alcoholics may suffer from hypoglycemia, especially if they are drinking their sustenance. And you can do this, like I said before. It's got 150 calories in it. So, and this is one of the reasons why people that drink a lot of alcohol have beer bellies, what they call beer bellies. They're getting all their sustenance from this stuff, and it turns alcohol. One of the things that it does is turn into sugar. First, as soon as it hits your stomach, it breaks it down into sugar. The alcohol doesn't break into sugar, but the substance does. If it's beer, wine, it turns into sugar almost right away. And of course, then it mounts on your stomach. You can do the same thing if you drink a lot of pop. If you drink a lot of sugared pop, it goes right to your stomach or your thighs, depending on where you accumulate your fat. If the individual is taking in sufficient nutrition, the extra carbohydrates in the alcohol can cause hyperglycemia. Light to moderate drinking of alcohol actually can help the heart. Chronic heavy drinking can lead to heart disease by a factor of 6 times, hypertension by a factor of 2 to 3 times, cardiac arrhythmia, cardiomyopathy, and large, flabby, inefficient heart. Alcohol damages the striated muscles of the heart. The hearts of heavy drinkers is often twice the size of a normal heart. 80% of heavy drinkers have, that's known as cardiomyopathy, if it's an enlarged heart. 80% of heavy drinkers have heart muscle abnormalities, though only 2% suffer from full-blown alcoholic heart muscle disease. Stroke and other intracranial bleeding, usually within 24 hours of heavy drinking, they may suffer a stroke. Alcohol kills brain cells by limiting the brain's ability to use glucose and oxygen, though low moderate doses don't seem to cause permanent damage. Heavy doses cause direct damage to nerve cells. Malnutrition caused by alcohol will not only damage brain cells, but brain chemistry as well. Brain atrophy has been documented in up to 100% of alcoholic autopsies. Dementia is a result of prolonged heavy drinking as well. So there you go. You really are pickling your brain. Heavy drinking can lead to 2 serious brain maladies: Wernicke's encephalopathy, which causes delirium, imbalance, visual problems, and ataxia, the inability to coordinate movements in the lower extremities. It's known as Wernicke's encephalopathy. Now, so so we're talking about all these negative things that can happen to you. So who suffers from this? Well, not everybody does. If I'm laughing about this because I'm thinking, well, white people, black people, indigenous people, Hispanics. So who's more likely to suffer from Wernicke's encephalopathy? Well, not the white guy, because white people have built up a tolerance to alcohol over eons, over centuries, thousands and thousands of years. They're professional drinkers. Other individuals, not so much. Anyway, so um, and not everybody has the same body chemistry. I certainly don't have the same chemistry that everybody else has. I can't take ibuprofen. Opiates and opioids don't work on me. Caffeine doesn't do anything to me. My body chemistry is obviously different. I've never tried alcohol to see if it works, but I had a student from Romania. She could drink anybody under the table. She was just amazing in that she never got drunk. Now, it's not that the alcohol wasn't damaging her system, and I tried to explain that to her. Look, you can drink a lot of alcohol and not get drunk, but that doesn't mean it's not doing anything to you. You need to stop because she could go out and she could drink all night long and not get a hangover and not get drunk. So what was happening to her? We don't know. She could have been one that developed Wernicke's encephalopathy. The other thing that can happen is Korsakoff's psychosis. The individual becomes disoriented. Their memory is just blown to all to hell. They will, if you tell them something, if you say something, they will assume that it's true, and it becomes part of their memory as if they did it. And this is known as confabulation. They'll repeat any false memories that they are given. Epilepsy is also related to heavy alcoholic intake. Epilepsy is 10 times more prevalent among alcoholics. Changes the electricity in your brain. The reproductive system and sexual desire can also be affected by alcohol, whereas light drinking actually lowers inhibitions and increases desire and the intensity of orgasms. Heavy drinking decreases desire and lessens the intensity of orgasms. Research with heavy female drinkers found that 36% only had orgasms 5% of the time. So while it increases the probability of orgasms, the heavier you drink, the less likely you're going to have an orgasm. Chronic drinking can inhibit ovulation. It decreases gonadal mass. It delays female menstruation. It causes sexual dysfunction in both males and females. It promotes infertility. It increases the chances of spontaneous abortion. The reproductive, whereas low to moderate drinking can lower inhibitions and enhance the psychological aspects of sexual activity in men, chronic heavy use can lead to inability to perform. Research found that 71% of alcoholics suffered from erectile dysfunction, compared to only 7% of abstainers. Chronic heavy usage leads to a lowered testosterone and an increased estrogen level. It lowers your testosterone and increases your estrogen level. So if you drink heavily, you're actually neutering yourself. You're increasing your estrogen level, making it more likely that you're going to look like a female, and you're lowering your testosterone level, which means that you're going to be looking more like a female. It can cause male breast enlargement, and this is one of the things that we see in older alcoholic males is larger chests, but it's not muscles, it's just fat. Testicular atrophy, low sperm counts, loss of body hair, loss of sexual desire, performance anxiety once sexual activity is resumed. The most serious effect may be social drinkers tend to socialize mainly in bars and at parties where normal sexual relationships are circumspect. So these guys might be cool, but they're not going to perform. While the connection between breast cancer and drinking is questionable, the possibility of developing cancers in the areas that come in contact with the alcohol is 6 times greater than those that do not imbibe. Mouth cancer is more common, throat cancer is more common, especially esophageal cancer. These cancers are 7 times more likely for those who use tobacco but do not drink. For people who drink and smoke both, the possibility of developing these cancers increases by a factor of 38. And of course, liver cancer for anybody that drinks alcohol, especially females. Alcohol leaches minerals from the body, leading to a greater risk of fracture. Myopathy, muscle inflammation, can be caused by chronically imbalanced electrolytes due to alcohol consumption. Dilation of blood vessels near the skin can lead to a chronic reddish complexion, while the toxic effects of alcohol may lead to thinning of the skin. Acne rosacea, which is reddening of the blood vessels in your face. Psoriasis, eczema, facial edema. One of the problems with alcohol is that it dries. It dries. You can use it to dry things off. So if one of the ways that the alcohol is escaping your body is through your skin, through the pores in your skin, and that can cause your skin to be drier than normal, and that can cause psoriasis and eczema. Facial edema, where your face collects fluids. Heavy drinking disrupts the immune system, but especially your white blood cells, making the individual susceptible to infections, especially respiratory infections. Tuberculosis is very common among alcoholics, as is pneumonia. Chronic heavy usage of alcohol can make the individual a great deal of fun. Memory problems, hallucinations, paranoia, severe depression, insomnia, intense anxiety, amnesia, and blackouts. Due to damage to the frontal lobe and hippocampus, the individual often has problems with concentration and implanting new information in the brain. On the average, heavy drinkers reduce their lifespan by an average of 15 years. There are 140 million drinkers in the United States. Of those, 10 to 12% will become alcoholics. 14% of male drinkers and 6% of female drinkers will become alcoholics. Men become alcoholics at a younger age than women. 20% of all drinkers, heavy drinkers, consume 80% of all the alcohol. Alcohol production and usage has been controlled by financial factors since before the beginning of the United States. And just like slavery, its detractors have been screaming into the wind. Founding father Dr. Benjamin Rush warned of the deleterious effects of alcohol as early as 1804. Dr. Thomas Trotter was coming to the same conclusions at the same time, but their administrations fell on deaf ears. In 1941, Dr. E.M. Jelinek and Carl Bowman developed a classification of the different forms of alcoholism. The comfortable classification of alcoholics has changed over time as the understanding of the addiction process has progressed. According to a recent reclassification by National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism constructed in 2007, there are 5 subtypes of alcoholics based on 6 criteria: family history, age of onset of drinking and problem drinking, patterns of craving and abuse, use of additional drugs, and mental conditions. Subtype 1, young adult, 31.5% of U.S. alcoholics are of this subtype. They are characterized by relatively low rates of simultaneous drug abuse and other mental conditions, low rates of family alcoholism, and they rarely seek any kind of alcoholic treatment. Subtype 2, young antisocial, 21% of U.S. alcoholics are young antisocial alcoholics. They're usually in their mid-20s with precocious onset of regular drinking and alcohol-related issues, usually happens in adolescence. Over 50% come from families with alcoholism problems, and about 50% have an antisocial personality disorder and a major depression, bipolar disorder, or an anxiety problem. Over 75% smoke cigarettes and marijuana, and a large percentage also have a cocaine or heroin addiction. More than 30% of them look for help. Subtype 3, functional alcoholics. Functional alcoholics represent 19.5% of U.S. alcoholics, usually middle-aged, well-educated, with stable jobs and families. Approximately 33% present a multi-generational family history of alcoholism. About 25% presented major depressive illness during their lifespan, and about 50% were smokers. Subtype 4, intermediate familial. 19% of U.S. alcoholics are intermediate familial alcoholics, middle-aged and coming from multi-generational alcoholism. About 50% have presented clinical depression and 20% bipolar disorder. Most of them smoked cigarettes, and about 20% abused cocaine and marijuana. Just 25% looked for a cure. Subtype 5 chronic severe alcoholics, 9% of U.S. alcoholics can be categorized as chronic severe. The majority are middle-aged individuals with early onset of drinking and alcohol-related issues with high rates of antisocial personality disorder and criminality. 80% presented multi-generational alcoholism. They were the most prone to psychiatric conditions and drug abuse. 70% of them looked for help, forming the main category in alcoholic treatment. The coexistence of psychiatric and drug abuse issues were linked with severity of alcoholism and the date of beginning the treatment. Help seeking was found to be relatively rare, people choosing mainly to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and participate in other 12-step programs. Excuse me. Family studies have shown that there is a hereditary influence on alcoholism. The same genes that potentially lead to addiction also may express a proclivity to become an alcoholic, the DRD2A1 gene. But people who drink may have several other genetic anomalies that might lead to alcoholism. Many Asians have an ALDH2 gene that encodes aldehyde dehydrogenase. Excuse me. Because the person doesn't have as much of the enzyme to rid themselves of toxic alcohol, they become ill when they drink. Half the Japanese and many other Asians have more efficient alcohol dehydrogenase and less efficient aldehyde dehydrogenase, which leads to a buildup of acetaldehyde, which in turn creates a toxic level of acetaldehyde, resulting in rapid flushing, tachycardia, which is rapid heartbeat, headaches, edema, hypertension, and vomiting. So they get rid of their alcohol really fast. Other indicators that heredity strongly influences alcoholism is such characteristics that run in families or groups, such as tendency to have blackouts, greater initial tolerance to alcohol, an impaired decision-making area of the brain, a major shift in personality during drinking, an impaired ability to learn from mistakes, retrograde amnesia, low level of response to alcohol, cirrhosis, and alcoholic psychosis. The environment that an individual inhibits can have a strong influence on whether they drink alcohol. Factors that can lead to alcohol abuse include child abuse, alcohol or other drug abusing parents, friends, or relatives, chaotic familial relations, peer pressure, extreme stress. One of the most powerful environmental factors in alcohol or drug abuse is sexual, physical, or emotional abuse at a young age. In one study looking at 275 female and 556 male alcoholics, 20% of the men and 50% of the women said that they had been subject to physical or sexual abuse as a child. When someone drinks alcohol, their brain-body neurochemistry changes. The brain-body will try to protect itself from the effects of alcohol by developing tolerance to the substance. The drinker will develop metabolic tolerance by metabolizing the alcohol more efficiently. The liver of the drinker will manufacture more enzyme to break down the alcohol and the metabolite acetaldehyde. This also accelerates the breaking down of the other drugs, including prescription medications. When someone drinks alcohol, their brain-body neurochemistry changes. The pharmacodynamic tolerance takes place in the brain when brain neurons and other cells become resistant to the effects of alcohol by increasing the number of receptor sites for GABA in the brain, becoming less sensitive to alcohol. Behavioral tolerance occurs when the drinker learns to handle their liquor, changing their behavior to make it more acceptable and acting in a way to hide their drunkenness. Hangovers represent the individual's withdrawal reactions to the alcohol. 85 to 95% of those experiencing withdrawal will have only minor symptoms: rapid pulse, sweating, increased body temperature, hand tremors, anxiety, depression, insomnia, nausea, or vomiting. 5 to 15% will experience life-threatening major symptoms of withdrawal, tachycardia, transient tactile, auditory or visual hallucinations and illusions, psychomotor agitation, grand mal seizures, delirium tremens. For individuals going through alcohol withdrawals, delirium tremens and seizures are the most severe and life-threatening effects. Before modern medications to ease the sufferer, 35% of people going through severe symptoms died. With modern techniques, the mortality rate still approaches 5 to 15%, and if left untreated, the rates increase to 10 to 20%. What does this mean? This means that alcohol is the hardest thing to get off of. It will kill you if you're going through symptoms. If you're an alcoholic and you start having delirium tremens, then going off alcohol cold turkey, in 35% of the cases, you will die. That's in the old days. Now, if you're going through treatment at some institute like Betty Ford Institute or something, we still get deaths. It ain't pretty, and it doesn't smell good. Delirium tremens usually begins 48 to 96 hours after the individual's last drink. The DT's delirium tremens can last from 3 to 10 days, with some serious cases extending into 50 days, depending on how good an alcoholic they are, how long they've been drinking. Individuals who have gone through the DTs before seem to fear the powerful and frightening hallucinations that they suffer more than any other symptom. Severe symptoms develop after prolonged heavy drinking. 48 to 87 consecutive days of heavy drinking can cause this. Drinking alcohol creates a neurotransmitter crisis in the brain because alcohol increases the effectiveness of GABA, which blocks the chemicals that induce energy. The person becomes drowsy and the bodily functions become depressed. The brain, however, compensates by increasing energy chemicals and creating a state of hyperarousal. When withdrawal takes place after heavy alcohol usage, the hyperproduction of the energy and feel-good chemicals reverses itself, and they are produced at lower levels than normal. I was playing in a softball tournament in Montana. We were up near the Canadian border. The Canadian team came down to play ball, and I'll tell you what, they were good. They were so good. We played them the first day, and they beat us to death. They must have beat us 30 to nothing. I mean, it was horrible. We couldn't get them out. The next day we played them. We got into that, and that knocked us into the knockout round. So we beat two more teams, and the next day we had to play the Canadians. And this was kind of for the championship, but it wasn't really for the championship yet because it was in the, we were one of the top four teams. So we had to play the Canadians again. And by golly, they had drunk all night long. they were such a mess. We just killed them the next day. I mean, they beat us 30 to nothing, and they were a much better team than we were. They couldn't even find the ball. I mean, they couldn't find the ball when they were trying to field it. They couldn't find the ball when they were batting, and we beat them to death. We beat them 30 to nothing. But it was all because of their heavy drinking the night before. And these are Canadians. And Canadians, you know, they can drink their beer, but they were also drinking a lot of whiskey. And I'll tell you what, it was a mess. It was just a mess. And we won that tournament. We won the tournament. They should have won the tournament. They were so much better than everybody else, but they were just a mess. What are we talking about? Oh, the brain, however, compensates by increasing the energy chemicals and creating a state of hyperarousal. When withdrawal takes place after heavy alcohol usage, the hyperproduction of the energy and feel-good chemicals reverses itself, and they are produced at lower levels than normal. The decrease of energy chemicals causes tachycardia, anxiety, increased muscular activity, hypertension, and seizures. The activity of the serotonin is a good example. Serotonin is reduced 30% when heavy drinkers stop drinking, causing anxiety and depression during withdrawal. Serotonin actually increases when you start drinking alcohol, but when you go off alcohol, then you get depressed. And the reason you get depressed is because your serotonin goes into the tank. Over the last century, many sociological experiments have been conducted to reduce the effects of alcohol abuse, raising the drinking age, techniques to lower the child abuse in the home, limiting the sale of alcohol, working to lower the stress in everyday life. Most illicit drug users also drink. Most alcohol abusers use other drugs. A study in Europe in 2003 found that of 600 adolescent drug users, 80% used both marijuana and alcohol. A similar study in the United States of adolescents in treatment found that 96% used alcohol with other drugs. In a study in 2006 in the United States found that among heavy drinkers, 32.2% used illicit drugs at the same time. 80 to 95% of drinkers also smoke cigarettes, while 70% of alcoholics are heavy smokers as compared to 25% of the general population. I played softball on a co-ed team, and there was this one lady that never drank. But when she did drink beer, she also smoked cigarettes at the same time. She didn't smoke any other time other than when she drank. It was really kind of strange. She was a little odd to be around. And her personality would change completely. It was just so bizarre. Tobacco and alcohol are used to facilitate social situations. When alcohol and marijuana are used together, it accelerates relaxation. Drinking before using cocaine will prolong and intensify the effects of the cocaine, though it increases the predisposition for violence. Alcohol will facilitate an individual's ability to come down off of methamphetamines. Compulsive gamblers drink while gambling or gamble while drinking. Unfortunately, many times people with mental disorders will use alcohol to relieve their symptoms. Among men and women who are alcohol dependent, 4% suffer from bipolar disorder, 4 times the figure for the general population. 5.3% of the general public suffer from major depression, while 28% of people diagnosed with alcohol dependence suffer from major depression. 16.4% of the general public suffer from anxiety, while 37% of alcohol-dependent people suffer from the malady. However, it is difficult to draw direct parallels between alcohol and mental illness because the effects of alcohol mirror or can create mental problems. Heavy drinking disrupts the neurotransmitters in the reward pathway that lead to feelings of well-being, opioid peptides, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. In one detox center, 70% of the alcoholics were originally diagnosed as suffering from depression. After abstinence of a month or more, the depression diagnosis had dropped to 30%. Any psychiatric diagnosis must always take into account the possibility of drug-induced symptoms. Individuals diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder show symptoms of impulsivity, lack of remorse for causing harm, inability to learn from mistakes. These same symptoms are found in drug abusers, including alcoholics. 80% of those diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder develop substance dependence. If a mother drinks during pregnancy, especially the first trimester of her pregnancy, there's a great possibility that the alcohol will do damage to the fetus, and she is more likely to miscarry or cause infant death. Alcohol intake during pregnancy is the leading cause of intellectual disability in the United States. Surveys of pregnant women in the United States shows that 12.4% drank some alcohol during several months of their pregnancy, 4% used in binge patterns, 0.7% were heavy drinkers, 18% smoked cigarettes, 4.3% used illicit drugs at least once, and that is my great niece. One study of 293 infants born with fetal alcohol syndrome and alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder in Portland, Oregon showed that 89% were using alcohol with at least 2 other drugs, 49% were using alcohol with cocaine. 100% were smokers, most were single mothers, most were high school dropouts, most had a history of sexual and or physical abuse, many had a history of drug or alcohol abuse in the family, Many had learning disabilities that may have come from substance abuse effects when they were in the womb. In a study of fetal alcohol syndrome at the University of Washington, two groups of infants were followed into adolescence. By the age of 5, 38% of the children's biological mothers had died of alcohol-related causes. These are children suffering from FAS. By the age of 5, over one-third of them had lost their mothers to alcohol-related causes. By the time the group reached adolescence, 69% of the biological mothers had died of alcoholic-related causes. Only one-third of them, less than one-third of them, still had their biological mothers. Alcohol consumption during pregnancy can cause 3 varying degrees of problems: fetal alcohol syndrome, retarded growth, facial deformities, problems with heart and limbs, central nervous system involvement, potentially lowered IQ from a range of 20 to 120, and a mean of 79. Alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorder, ARND, and alcohol-related birth defects, ARBD. All 3 of these problems are referred to as fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, FASD. And this is what it looks like. This is a child's brain who has never, his mother wasn't exposed to alcohol. You can see this is the corpus callosum right here. And this is the corpus callosum of a child with fetal alcohol syndrome. This is a normal child's brain. This is a FAS affected child's brain. A child who suffers from the less severe forms of FASD, ARND, or ARBD may have an IQ ranging from 49 to 142 with a mean score of 90, though they will have other problems: difficulty with short-term memory, problems storing and retrieving information, difficulty forming links and making associations, problems making judgments and forming relationships, difficulty controlling temper and aggression, oversensitivity to bright lights, loud noises, sharp smells, textures, and tastes of food. Worldwide FAS rates range from 0.33 to 2.9 cases per 1,000 births, though the figures vary by country and the use of alcohol. In the United States, the rates are 0.2 to 1.5 per 1,000 births. Asians and whites have 1 to 2 per 1,000. African Americans, 6 to 1,000. American Indians, 10 to 120, depending on the tribe and the area of the country that we're talking about. 10 to 120 per 1,000. The incidence of ARND and ARBD are about 3 times that of FAS in all groups in the United States. You may wonder which region or which tribes we're talking about. The Northern Plains tribes tend to have more alcoholism, so it's not the Southwest. It's the Northern Plains tribes. The tribes in Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota, Washington, Idaho. The most destructive time to consume alcohol for the fetus is the 3rd week through the 8th week of gestation, when the brain is forming. The corpus callosum is forming, the basal ganglia is forming, brain cell migration and organization are taking place. During the 2nd trimester, the facial features are forming and can be deformed by alcohol use. During the 3rd trimester, the hippocampus is forming, which might impair the encoding of visual and auditory information. The most destructive method of drinking for the fetus is to drink in a rapid manner. This is the concentration that is destructive, and drinking in that manner intensifies concentration. Studies have shown that 7 drinks per week is the minimum baseline for negative neurodevelopmental, neurobehavioral effects. But if the mother is consuming all of their alcohol in a binge pattern, the pattern becomes more important than the volume. During the growth period, alcohol contact for 4 hours is enough to kill brain cells. The only logical drinking pattern for a pregnant woman is total abstinence. Alcoholic fathers can also transmit mutated genes in their sperm due to the consumption of alcohol. While this can't lead to FAS, male children can suffer from other intellectual and functional deficits, impaired verbal skills, impaired thinking processes, impaired planning skills, problems with visual spatial skills, problems with motor skills, memory deficits, learning impairment. Alcohol interferes with the main inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain, GABA, which reduces inhibitions. People with a pre-existing aggressive tendency will become more aggressive with the use of alcohol. 30% of the victims of violent crimes report that the perpetrator had been drinking alcohol before the offense. 15% of robberies, 26% of aggravated assaults, 50% of homicides. When arrested, alcohol levels of probationers was 0.18. When arrested, alcohol levels of local jail inmates was 0.20. When arrested, alcohol levels of state prisoners was 0.28. In a study from Memphis, Tennessee of domestic violence calls, 92% of the perpetrators had consumed alcohol the day of the disturbance. 67% of the perpetrators had used cocaine the day of the disturbance. Half had used alcohol and or cocaine often during the last 30 days. Domestic violence. Alcohol encourages the release of pent-up anger, hatred, and desires that are normally controlled by society. The drunk's moral judgment and reasoning are impaired by the alcohol. 34 to 74% of perpetrators of sexual assault had been drinking before the assault. 30 to 79% of the victims of sexual assault had been drinking prior to the assault. A lot of drunk people. Both of them are drunk. So whose fault is it? In 2005, 40% of the motor vehicle fatalities involved alcohol. I'm saying it's both of their faults. I'm not saying it's neither. It's not the woman's fault. It's not the male's fault. It's both of their faults. In 2005, 40% of the motor vehicle fatalities involved alcohol, 16,885. 90% of those situations involved a blood alcohol test level of 0.08 or higher. 275,000 injuries occurred at the same time. However, an aggressive advertising campaign and more aggressive sentencing for DUI infractions has reduced traffic fatalities by 18% since 2005. How stupid can you be? 1 in 4 drunks drive within 2 hours of their last drink. On any given weekday night between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., 1 out of every 13 drivers is legally drunk. On weekend mornings between 1 to 6 a.m., 1 in 7 drivers on the road is drunk. Of convicted DUI perpetrators, 61% drank beer only, 2% drank wine only, 18% drank liquor only, 20% mixed their drinks. Alcohol-related crashes cost an estimated $148 billion a year in the United States. A blood alcohol test level of 0.08 is a legal limit for driving under the influence. The individual does not have to show impairment to be found guilty. It is estimated that only 1 driver is arrested for every 300 to 1,000 drunk driving trips. What has worked over the years to reduce traffic deaths due to alcohol? Lowering legal inebriation levels from 0.10 to 0.08, imposing immediate license revocation for individuals whose ethanol level exceeds the legal limit, increasing the legal drinking age from 18 to 21, maintaining zero tolerance for youth under 21 who are caught DUI. This has reduced crashes involving youth 17 to 50%. Impounding or towing vehicles of DUIs, requiring mandatory treatment for DUI arrestees. Dram laws, those who serve are liable for a customer who becomes intoxicated. 22 states have dram laws and 14 have limited dram laws. Both Iowa and Illinois have active dram laws that makes a proprietor actionable if a patron causes an injury. I'm not sure about Arizona and New Mexico. Medical reports involving alcohol, 15 to 25% of emergency room patients reported the use of alcohol, especially those involved in fights, assaults, and falls. Alcoholics are 16 times more likely to die in falls and 10 times more likely to be burned or die in a fire. 31% of boating fatalities had a blood alcohol test level of 0.10 or more. 40% of industrial fatalities and 47% of injuries involve alcohol. There was a pitcher that pitched for the Marlins. He was really, really good, and he was in a boating accident, and he killed himself along with two other guys in a boating accident in Miami Bay. It was about 10 years ago. His name was Fernandez. Really good pitcher. 40% of industrial fatalities and 47% of injuries involve alcohol. Alcoholics commit suicide at twice the rate of general population. Most alcoholics who commit suicide are white, male, middle-aged. They're unmarried and have a long history of drinking. Culture determines how an individual will consume alcohol. What cultures such as Austria, Belgium, France, Italy, and Switzerland sanction daily use of alcohol? It's okay in those cultures. Integrate social drinking into everyday life. They serve watered-down wine to children for meals. They drink more beer and wine than dry cultures do. Dry cultures such as they have in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden restrict alcohol use with heavy taxing, consume more distilled spirits, about 50% more, characterized by binge drinking, particularly males, on the weekend. Mixed cultures such as that in Canada, England, Germany, Ireland, and the United States demonstrate patterns of binge drinking, have a higher incidence of violence to women than either of the wet or dry cultures. Russia has had an alcohol-soaked culture for 500 years. Vodka is traditionally drunk between meals in large quantities. A form of prohibition that started in 1985 resulted in illegal manufacture and 11,000 alcohol poisoning deaths. The male life expectancy actually rose in Russia during the prohibition period. As soon as prohibition ended, alcohol poisonings increased to 40,000 per year. Male life expectancy dropped by 6 years in 1 year after prohibition was overturned in Russia. In England, 70% of the population drinks regularly. 2/3 of the consumption of alcohol is in the form of beer, usually warmed with darts. They play darts. Recent attempts to curb the destruction of alcohol in the British public has been in the form of prohibiting happy hours, allowing the pubs to stay open past 11 p.m. to reduce the need to binge drink at the end of the hour, last call, everybody gets 2 beers, encouraging the English to reduce average consumption to 3 drinks per day. On the average, men drink more per drinking episode than women do. Men also tend to have more adverse social and legal effects from the alcohol. Women tend to increase their drinking after they pass 30 years of age. Even when they are dependent on alcohol, women drink 1/3 less than men who are also dependent. Hereditary factors seem to be stronger in women when it comes to alcohol. Female alcoholics have 50 to 100% higher death rates than male alcoholics. They die from cirrhosis of the liver, circulatory disorders, suicide, and accidents. The younger an individual starts using alcohol or tobacco, the more likely they will have a problem with the substance later in life. 6.2% of 8th graders have been drunk in the past month. 18.8% of 10th graders have been drunk in the past month. 30% of 12th graders have been drunk in the past month. The immaturity of the adolescent brain can lead to unwise decisions. When disinhibiting factors of alcohol is thrown into the mix, the individual is more likely to drive drunk, unplanned pregnancies, of course, and sexual aggression. Drinking during adolescence leads to limited emotional growth. College students are adolescents into their junior year. 44% of our best and brightest admit to binge drinking. About half of the binge drinking college students admit that their grades fall into the C to F range. Many also admit to missing class on a regular basis. A national study showed a direct correlation between the number of drinks consumed per week and the individual's grade point average. Women are more sensitive to the deleterious effects of alcohol on grades. 86% will show the same pattern of drinking that they developed in high school. By graduation, the college-educated drink less than their non-college attending peers. Males binge more than females, 48.6% compared to 40.9%. 50.2% of white students binge as compared to 34.4% of Hispanic students, 26.2% of Asians, and 21.7% of blacks. Fraternity residents binge at 75.4%. Dormitory residents binge at 45.3%. Off-campus residents binge at 54.5%. Married residents binge the least at 26.5%. College drinking leads to 1,700 deaths per year, 690,000 physical assaults, 599,000 injuries, and 97,000 sexual assaults. Intelligence about drinking doesn't increase with age. 2,500,000 Americans have alcohol-related problems as patterns develop sometimes as a pre-adolescent can continue into old age. Alcohol can deplete bone density, especially in women, who tend to be more susceptible to osteoporosis. Surprisingly, about one-third of all older people who drink didn't start until they were older. Asians and Pacific Islanders have the lowest alcohol consumption rate of any of the major racial or ethnic groups in the United States. 4% of the adult population are heavy consumers. Filipino and Japanese Americans are the most likely from this group to drink heavily. Koreans have the highest number of abstainers. African Americans have the second lowest percentage of heavy drinkers in their population at 4.2% compared to whites at 7.4%. Only 40.8% of black males drink monthly compared to 56.5% of white males. Peak drinking seems to occur after the age of 30. Explanations for high levels of abstention among blacks may be their long history of strong spirituality and matriarchal family structure. 8.1% of Hispanic population consume alcohol at a heavy rate. Heavy alcohol use is highest among Mexican Americans. Past month use runs at about 46.7%. Binge drinking runs at about 25.8%. 6.2% of Hispanics can be classified as alcohol dependent. American Indians, Alaska Natives have drinking rates that greatly vary by region of the country and tribal affiliations. The heaviest drinking appears to occur among the Northern Plains tribes. Of the 10 leading causes of death, 5 are directly connected to alcohol abuse. Number 3, unintentional injuries. Number 4, diabetes. Number 6, liver disease and cirrhosis. Number 8, suicide. And number 10, homicide. For American Indian Alaska Natives, alcohol-related motor vehicle deaths are 5.5 times higher than the general population. Cirrhosis of the liver is 4.5 times higher. Alcoholism is 3.8 times higher. Homicide is 2.8 times higher. Suicide is 2.3 times higher. And that is it. Let me get out of here. Okay, so, wow. Smart thing to do, not a smart thing to do. I'd say it's not very smart. Stay away from it. It's better if you never start. Or if you do start, just go ahead and stop. But if you're an alcoholic, do it slowly. If you've really got a problem, if you crave alcohol, then you need to come off of it slowly. I don't have an addictive personality. When I stopped in 1976, I just stopped. But then again, I'd only been drunk 3 times. In 1976, I was how old? 27. Okay, so I've never been much of a drinker. So it's hard for me to talk about this stuff, but I've seen a lot of it. Just way too much. Anyway, I need to do one more lecture for this week. So you'll see me again in All Arounders.